Hey, welcome back to Women in Sales Leadership. I'm Amy Evans. I'm rerunning some of the best episodes. I've handpicked them for you, the most popular, the most downloaded, and I'm making them available in this 3-episode rerun package just for you. Even if you've heard one of these before, I promise you, you are going to hear something different this time. You're not the same person the first time you listened. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Women in Sales Leadership. I have an exciting topic that I think is going to cause some interesting conversations, maybe even if it's just a conversation in your own mind, which is a worthy conversation to have, since that's where a lot of conversations go down, right? Is in our heads, especially on this particular topic. And this topic that I want to cover and share with you all is this idea of growth and career growth, career trajectory. This last week, I just presented a masterclass to sales managers who are interested and want to find a way and get a path into becoming a leader of leaders, which is not for everybody. And that's 100% okay. You know, like we all have to figure out what's in our heart. And that's, you hear me talk about heart a lot. And that's what I talk about a lot in general is, you know, the heart never lies. And so in having that perspective, we can look at our careers, and it's always this push and pull, I find, especially when we get to maybe midpoint, we're past 15 years plus in our careers. And this kind of push pull can begin to come to you and play where, you know, and I think about this for myself, like early in my career, I was so focused on being, fast paced and moving up, right? And this was in the early 2000s. Okay. So anybody who tries to just pin this on millennials or Gen Z, like, okay, I'm an absolute bona fide Gen Xer, and I was full on obsessed with and wanted to move up and grow in my career, right? That's just kind of how I was wired. Sometimes to a fault, but we're not going to get to that part. But, you know, I knew when I was young and I was just starting in my career that I didn't want to stay in entry-level roles, right? Isn't that the whole point of entry-level roles, is that you come in, you learn the role, you master the role, and you demonstrate what you are capable of, right? In my case, it was being a BDR and, you know, cold calling all day, every day. And it does crack me up. Anybody who spends a minute on LinkedIn, everybody's always talking about cold calling and like the novelty of like, is it dead? And there's some sort of debate evidently about, is cold calling dead? I'm not going to talk about that, but I will say that, you know, in the year 2000, it was full on not dead. And I don't think it's dead now either. It's changed quite a bit. It's gotten, just like anything, you know, more challenges associated with it than before. And that's due to technology. But when I was at that point in my career, right, I wanted what everybody wanted when we were in our early 20s to mid 30s. You know, I wanted to move up, right? I had this big vision of myself, and maybe even a little bit of, you know, a healthy dose of ego, maybe a little bit too much ego. And some of you, maybe you remember feeling this way too when you were early in your career, where we felt just like we really knew everything and how to do everything. And, you know, on one half, that was kind of crazy because we were so young and didn't know anything. But on the other half, we did know how to push and how to challenge and how to be fearless, because we were at this point in our lives where, quite frankly, we didn't have as much at stake anymore at that point, right? Like, what did we have? A bunch of college debt, probably, and a desire to have a few nickels to rub together to go out for a weekend, to maybe go on a vacation with friends and pay off whatever school debt you might have, whatever credit card debt you incurred when you were in college. That was me, right? So it's so natural and normal at that younger part of the career to just be driven and want to move up and grow. And when I reflect back to what those early years were like, some of you, it was similar. You probably did move up every year to year and a half, right? Because you were just in these opportunities to, demonstrate capabilities, move up, demonstrate capabilities, move up. And of course, economy had a lot to do with it, but I mean, I'm talking about, right after 2001, 9/11, for anybody who was working in those days, my fellow Gen Xers, that was like an absolute nosedive. The dot-com bubble burst, people were laid off like crazy. And, the only people that stuck around and had a job were delivering numbers and results, and probably cheap labor like me. Or I was relatively cheap compared to other people. Like, I don't want to know what I was paid compared to anybody else. I don't really want to think about that because that's not what this is about. But we get to this point in our careers where, okay, so you're 5 years in, you've had some trajectory, like you've moved up, and naturally, as the sophistication of the promotions, the sophistication of the challenges that you've taken on increases, your life has also probably gotten more complicated at home too, right? Maybe you have a partner that you're committed to. Maybe you're married. Maybe you're not. Uh, for me at that time, I was married and I had 2 young kids. I mean, wow. I mean, all I had time to do, and anybody who's in this moment, I feel you and I see you. Like, all I had time to do is just like wake up every day, get myself dressed, deal with children, get them off to whatever childcare situation I had squared away, and, go do my job every day and come home and like rinse, repeat. And like, just this, it was robot mode really. Cause when you have young children and you have a big job, you're just kind of getting through every single day. And anyway, but what inspired this conversation today is this thought about growth and growth mindset and how it changes and evolves as you get to different moments in your career. And, one of the things when I was doing a lot of hiring of salespeople, sales account executives in technology, I did notice like a shift, and it happened, I don't know, before I was ready for it, like most shifts happen, right? Where these folks would come in and they were talented, they were bright, they were full of moxie and energy and all the things that I had when I was, in my mid 20s and, starting off in my career, and a little bit of a, I know everything, which I I kind of tend to love that a little bit. It's slightly annoying, but it's almost better than the self-doubt that happens when it creeps in on you when you're further on in your career. But these folks would show up to interviews and they'd be in their career paths and they want to move quickly. And what I would hear was all this, kind of annoyance coming from people that were at my tenure of career, where they'd be looking at these young whippersnappers, right? As I can't believe I just said whippersnapper. So, okay, there we go. But we look at these young kids and say like, oh, and somehow be offended by the fact that they want to move up and they want to get promoted and they want to make more money, when in fact, it's exactly what we were doing when we were their age. There wasn't just some sort of stasis that we were happy to be in for like, hey, I'm just going to hang out and be a BDR for 3 years before I get promoted. Well, maybe if your results weren't good, that made sense. But if you're a high performer, not so much, right? So I think the distinction here is always going to be in the performance and the results, and not just did you deliver the numbers, but are you actually ready to get there? So we see a little bit of that. And I'm going to pause for a second because I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. Hang on. Let me pause. So we see a little bit of that. Okay. So it's like this, we're now more tenured and we're looking at these younger people and saying, who the F do you think you are that you want to get promoted, moved up so quickly? Well, so there's that mindset. And then when this shift happened, I started to notice people I'd be interviewing and hiring salespeople, not necessarily leaders, because leaders almost always had the chops and the experience, but it was sellers. And a lot of them, you know, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to judge all of them, but it did always cause me to have quite a bit of suspicion. And I got kind of, chastised isn't the right word. I got coached by my boss about this one. And it was this thought that some of these sellers, they'd hopped around. And when I say hopped around, it wasn't like, hey, I worked someplace for a couple years and I worked another place for 3 years. It was like almost every 12 months on the money, some of these folks were moving around. And look, I understand that things have changed. I get it. There is something to be said, though, for someone who can actually show up, learn a company, learn a product, learn all the people that have to support you in selling the product. Probably it's a complex product, at least in the tech space it is. Getting ramped up in a job like that, a job where you've got, somewhere between $1 million, $1.5 million quota for annual revenue, annual recurring revenue, 1.5 mil, you're selling pretty sizable deals. They're probably somewhere between, I don't know, 100K, half a mil. Some of them are even get to be north of $1 million in ARR. And learning how to do all those things and getting ramped up inside of a company takes a full on year. So when I would see these folks that were applying for roles and they'd had not one, not two, and not something that's explainable, like, hey, I got there and I got laid off, right? I mean, that's understandable. That happened to people. You got zero control over that. But what I would see were folks where they just would like show up. Yikes. I hate to think this about some people, but I think it probably was true. Maybe they had a ramp quota, some kind of draw where, they didn't really have to sell anything for a while, but still got paid. And it makes you wonder as a hiring manager, and you're seeing somebody who's had like a string of 1 year to 1.5 year stints at places. It's hard not to look at that and say red flag city, USA, right? Like, yikes. Because the risk that introduces in the leader's mind is, well, it's hard to hire people. It's expensive to hire people. It takes a while to get them ramped up and trained in how to do the job. Meanwhile, as a leader and even as a CEO, you're paying this person to be trained and you're getting no results really out of them yet, like productivity. And it's an investment in this individual. You're like, okay, I think this person's going to do it. I'm counting on them. I know they can deliver the results. They told me they would. We looked each other eye in the eye. Whatever interview process you went through that made you feel validated that this person was a good fit for the role and for the company and for the culture and all the things that you look for. So, but I noticed that. And I think that trend might be changing a little bit. But I remember raising this up as a red flag because my boss was pressuring me. She was saying, and rightfully so, right? This is her job. She's trying to hold me accountable. You've got all this open headcount, Amy. What's going on? How come you're not hiring faster? How come you're not hiring faster? Right? Well, I've hired fast before and it's kind of bit me in the ass. I won't lie. And I think that's one of the delicate dances that we as leaders make is to hire with velocity and not hire carelessly. Hire with velocity, but not hire carelessly. So she told me, she said, I told her, I said, keep seeing these resumes of these people. They've never stuck around anywhere. Like they show up, they get the training, maybe they sell something and then they leave, which is what the world looked like for a while. And maybe maybe y'all are still seeing that. And she told me, she said, Amy, that's so outdated. You can't hold that against these people. This is what the world is like now. So I didn't like that, I'll be honest, but I thought, well, maybe there's something for me to learn. And so, I think we may have actually moved, but it was, if we hired people that were like that, it was because they had a really good, credible story for why they'd had to hop around so often. There was some other out of their control circumstances, legit layoffs that happened, companies going out of business, acquisition, whatever, what the story is. So this thought of growth, and that's the topic for today, this thought of growth and the distinction between raising your hand for growth and having that growth hopefully occur in the same company that you're in, because it's a hell of a lot easier to grow inside of a company that you're already in, right? For all the reasons that it's familiar, the people, the technology, all the things that you need to know. It'll be so much easier for you, and their chance of success is going to be so much higher, right? You think about what's going to happen when you've got to deliver numbers everywhere you go when you're in sales, and that's the name of the game. And so the ability to come in and we know this phrase, and I'm just going to say it, but it's the old hit the ground running thing. It's an illusion, just by the way, but it's not much of an illusion when you have actually invested time in a company and you know the people and you know the process. You're not learning the company, right? So this thought of growth and evolving and knowing that pace of growth starts out pretty, right? It's this steep curve at the beginning of the career. And if you change careers, it becomes steep again, right? But if you stay in the same general career, it's this really steep growth that happens at the beginning. And then as you progress, you might taper off. And this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the tapering off part, because there's no right or wrong way to look at, do I have a different title? Do I have a different, increase in pay that's like some sort of big bump up, right? There's no right or wrong there. The only person who knows if that's right for you is you, because I have spoken to so many friends who are just absolute stone cold killers. I mean, not in a nasty way, but in like an amazing way of being rock stars in what they do. And they're sitting there thinking like, and one of them shared this with me a few months ago. She says, Aim, look, I could raise my hand and get promoted again. But you know what? Here's the thing. Like my son's only going to be home for another three years before he goes off to college. And if I take a promotion, I'm really going to have to like buckle down and work my ass off in order to step into that role, because right, we know what it takes to step into a new role. Like it's a big commitment, and a lot of things have to be right in order to take on that commitment. The most important thing that has to be right is it right for you in your life? And you know what's a perfectly acceptable answer? No, it's not. Because my priorities are different right now, right? And this story could not be in this situation. I talk about, a child and the limited time you have with them left before they go off to college, but it could be other things that are happening. Health for, a parent or another family member or a spouse that keeps you from saying like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to take that on right now. And there's nothing wrong with that, because here's the thing. For growth in high performers, there's really five things that high performers want in their careers, like almost universally. And I'm going to walk through this list. And what I want you to listen for is what's not here. What's not here. Okay. All right. So the first thing on this list of like, what do high performers want in their careers? It's growth and mastery. Growth and mastery. And when I reflect on my own career, every single time I wanted to step up, I wanted to learn something new. I felt like and I was ready to, I felt like I'd kind of like mastered that role. And mastery is subjective, and you could, I think sales is a game that you never master, by the way. It's always better, never best, always learning, always improving. Just when you think you've seen it all, there's something that gets thrown at you that you just have never seen before, and that you get to now learn how to deal with. And that happens regardless of if you are a CEO or, an executive running a business, or you are an individual contributor who's running a business, because let's face it, we're all running some form of a business. Your quota is your business. So growth and mastery. Okay. And so when what high performers really want is some sort of a challenge, a stretch, something to learn, the ability to continuously improve their skills and impact. Okay. So can you do that in the current role you're in? Only you know the answer to that. Can you figure out how to get it done in the role you're in? Only you know the answer to that. Or are you really ready for something else? And you know the answer to that. So the theme here is that because when we take a minute to actually step back from all the freaking Zoom calls and the logistics management of family and, whatever you choose to spend your time with, Netflix or, social media, no judgment. Hey, there's space for all that in a life. And, I too like to do those things. But when you have a minute of peace and you really reflect and you really just like, I'm going to say it, maybe meditate, your heart tells you. Your heart tells you. So growth and mastery. So the next, I'm going to walk through all 5 of these. So the next one is this. This is the second thing that high performers really want and look for in their careers. And that is the right mix of autonomy, so freedom, with accountability. And isn't that crazy? Autonomy with accountability. You've got the freedom. High performers want the freedom to execute in their own way once they've learned how to do like the blocking and tackling, the basics, right? They want to be able to color outside the lines and make their own craft out of what they're doing, not forsaking any of the gotta do's, not forsaking any of the 101 things that everybody knows to do, but really make it their own and execute in their own way. And do it without somebody breathing down their neck, right? We all know what that feels like. Ugh, gross, not good, not good. But the accountability part is critical here, because at the end of the day, all high performers really do seek someone who understands, someone who gets what the job is, someone who knows what excellent looks like, to coach them and help hold them accountable to be as awesome as they can be. Like, don't we all want that? Don't we all want somebody to say, look, I know how amazing you are. And if you said you were going to do this for yourself this week. You said you were going to get whatever done, whether it's for yourself. I hope it's for yourself, your family, your business, whatever, commitment that you made. Did you do it? It's awesome to have somebody who holds you accountable, because it feels like you've got somebody who's in it with you and you're not just alone. And in your moments of like maybe weakness or tiredness or, whatever you might be going through, they help you stay focused. That accountability helps you stay focused on being who you say you are and staying true to that. Okay. So autonomy and accountability. So then we look at the third one is, now some of you are going to say like, I don't like this. I don't need this. Right. That's okay. If it's not for you, it's not for you, but there's varying degrees of how this thing works. And when I say it, you're going to get it, which is the third thing that high performers really look for is recognition and influence. Recognition. Now, not everybody loves to be on the leaderboard. Not everybody wants their name in lights. And if you don't know for your people how they like to be recognized, that is your homework. That is your homework. Like, send them a message and say, hey, I don't know this about you. I'd like to learn so I get it right. Like, how do you like to be recognized? Publicly, privately? They want a handwritten note from you? Does that mean more to them? Or do they want to be like the superstar who's on the all hands call, who's telling about the big, huge win, and they get, right there, billboard in Times Square recognition? Okay. Got to know this. You got to ask. And if you don't know, don't stress about it. Simple enough. Okay. So then the influence is so unique though. I said recognition and influence. And so the influence really comes from having some power, high performers, they've got some juice and they don't want to, you get the right person. They don't feel the need or want to use it all the time, but you want them to have some influence because their ability to have influence really does elevate them. And so one of the things that I've always said and learned early in my leadership career is this, like, some of us have whatever manager, VP, director, whatever manager title that you've got as you're now suddenly a leader. You don't just wake up one day and be a leader. Like we all are leaders. We lead our lives, right? The word lead our lives. We are in charge. We have, we're fortunate that we can have some influence over our lives. And so we're all our leaders. And so when we empower high performers with an ability to have influence, you ask, and what does this look like? This looks like asking their opinion about something. Could be a policy change, could be a program. It could be putting your high performers together on some kind of a, review committee or feedback committee that you take seriously, and they are able to influence things inside of your business. So that can really add a lot. These are all things that, have you noticed? Have I said anything about money yet? Nope. It's on here, but it's not the number one thing. It's there. Like, we do all need to get paid. People want to get paid. Salespeople especially like to get paid. But I don't think they're any more unique about people wanting to get paid than anybody else is. They just happen to make more money than a lot of other roles in the company do. All right. So the fourth thing that high performers really look for and want in their careers is this alignment of purpose. And you know this for yourself already. Alignment of purpose. We want our work to matter. We want it to count. We want to feel like we are making some kind of difference. It aligns with who we are. We sell for a company that we respect. We sell services and solutions that we know work, that we believe in, and that, we are proud to talk about to other people, right? Like, alignment with purpose is so powerful for high performers, right? And one of the things that you can choose to do as a leader to really help your team and your high performers and all of your performers, because everyone has potential for high performance. I don't think that people are born high performers. Some people just have a little bit more drive. Some folks, it's like you've got to help them get the keys to their own engine a little bit. And once they turn it on, like, get out of the way, because they can't be stopped. Almost always I find somebody who's not a high performer is maybe just not a right fit for that particular role. Doesn't mean they couldn't be a high performer somewhere else. Different company, different role, hopefully different role inside your company, because you've paid a crap load of money to hire this person and train them, and to throw that investment away is it's not a good use of funds unless there's just a cultural mismatch. But this alignment of purpose is something you can get to, and it can be part of how you run your one-on-ones. Is to ask. You'll find I'm going to always suggest you ask questions, but ask, what makes you feel like your work makes a difference here, right? Of your values that you hold dear, which ones do you feel like are most aligned to this company and our business? Find out what they say. It'll tell you a lot about how they truly feel about your company. And if they don't know the answer, then maybe that's an opportunity to have a deeper conversation. Okay. The next thing is this, for high performers. What do high performers really want? Okay. And here's where the compensation comes in. Like it's a chance when they're ready, a chance to have upward mobility and reward. So whether that's like a promotion, stretch assignments, most high performers really do crave a clear path to advancement. Now, advancement isn't always leadership. Sometimes advancement is taken on, different, more complicated parts of the business, bigger accounts, bigger portfolios, more important accounts. I mean, you all get the idea here, but these are the things. And so when you look at yourself and where you are in your life as a high performer, upward mobility isn't the only thing on the table. That isn't the only option available to you. I've had friends who said, you know what? I don't want to be a leader. I'm not interested in it. It's just not for me. And there's never a wrong answer, ever. And instead, the real value is like, hey, instead of taking on this like leadership thing that I don't want to do, I'm instead going to move into a different role in the company, take on something that has bigger accounts, different more responsibility, so they can go through this cycle again, the growth and the mastery, having autonomy with accountability, being able to still engage in recognition and influence, have that aligned purpose to your, what your company does and what they want and what they believe they want and need for themselves. I mean, for me, my values and my purpose have always been like, there's so many values, right? But my purpose is to make a difference. Simple as that. I want to make a difference for people. I want to impact them in a way that they look back and say, that really helped me. And I don't even have to ever know about it, right? I just want to have a positive impact. And I think there's so many of us that feel this way, because I talk to a lot, all the leaders that I talk to, they say it, I want to make a difference, a positive difference. I want to be that, maybe, that leader that you either were inspired by, that leader that pushed you hard to do something that you didn't think you were capable of doing, but you ended up doing and amazed yourself, right? That kind of difference making. All of us have that in us. And it's not like you read some kind of inspirational book one day and decide like, oh, I'm going to make a difference. You just kind of know that for yourself. And then the inquiry begins about, how can I make a difference for others? and especially for my high performers, because the number one mistake that I see often get made, and I did this too, was for your high performers to to actually believe that they've got it all figured out and that they're doing so great, and all you want to do is just let them go and get out of their way and leave them alone. You do want to give them a ton of room to run, because they probably have earned that. They've certainly earned that if you feel that way, and you trust them. But these folks actually are the ones that you should be spending your most time with. And this is where you're going to get your best growth as a leader, because you're not going to be talking with these people about the block and tackle stuff, like what's in your pipeline and how many calls did you make today, and, deals and forecasting. Like, yes, you will have those conversations as part of doing the business. The level of conversation you're going to be having with high performer is more aligned with really, really elevating yourself into having like true coaching conversations, which some of us have learned how to be good at. And some are still learning, right? And the great thing about all this is that we always are still growing and mastering what we do. So where I started was this conversation about growth and how at our early point of our career, we are so, as my mother would have said, hot to trot. Was you're welcome, Wyoming expressions coming at you. It was so like hot to trot to move up. And then we get to where like life starts really happening in our lives. And this idea of growth doesn't always just mean grabbing at the next opportunity and feeling bad about ourselves if we don't. Because there's still opportunity as high performers to find richness in the experience by finding challenges and pursuing challenges that are still a stretch, a chance to learn, a chance to move up, if you will. But the movement up is usually in our mind. It's usually in, maybe even a lateral move can really be the kind of just enough change, just enough nuance, just enough novelty to re-engage our creativity, to reawaken that spirit of, oh my gosh, I'm not just making the donuts every day. I get to start again in a way that inspires me, in a way that has me energized about it. So that's my message today, is growth comes in so many flavors and forms. And, the last thing I'll leave you with is this one, where the one thing I will suggest is that fearing growth is legitimate. It's legit to fear growth, because every time we choose to make a move out of what we perceive as safety, like the same thing every day, right? We may bitch about it, we may complain about it, but ultimately, there's something, we're getting something out of being where we are, and maybe it's, freedom of time and mastery of the job, and it's not as hard as it once was when you first started, so that you can put your energy into other areas of your life, which is totally 100% cool and okay. People talk about change being hard, and they're not wrong. Change is absolutely difficult. And I happen to have a very, very significant level of experience with change, and not just career-wise, in my personal life. Anybody who knows me knows that, the amount of change that I've taken on in the past, 24 months alone is like staggering from a life standpoint. Like every single major thing somebody could do, I've done. So it is scary as hell. But then I'm also going to tell you this, that It's not going to kill you. It won't. I'm alive. I live to tell the tale. I live to tell the tale of uh, getting laid off from my job. I live to tell the tale of deciding that I needed to end a marriage and working through divorce and selling the family home and then starting a business during all of that. Boy, that's a ton, isn't it? Yeah, I'm still alive and I'm actually happier than I've been in a really long time. That's me. That's just what I needed to do. So every now and again, um, you'll know if it's time to make a change. And um, usually the signals start to feel pretty obvious to you. And I want you to just understand that there's always more than one way. There's always more than one way to have that, whatever change it is, occur. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. And growth is happening all day, every day inside of your physical body. You are changing right now. Like the person you were at the beginning of this podcast has changed physiologically. The person you were at the beginning of the year is not the person that you are now. There have been changes that you've had in your life. And so it's always there. And the more we can embrace and accept that it's happening and it will happen, then maybe that stuff that scares us so much can become a little bit less frightening, because we can shine some light underneath the bed and realize that there is no change monster hiding there. There's just not. All there is just choice. It's choice. We either choose to stay where we are and figure out how to make that work for us, or we choose something else and figure out how to make that work for us. Either way, there is no such thing as a wrong answer.